Hello, grade 10s. We're going to start our online learning with surface area today. We finished off with volume, which is the inside of a three-dimensional shape. Now we're going to jump into surface area, which is the total area of the surface outside a three-dimensional shape. And it's always measured in squared units. So remember, when we finish these questions, we always want to think centimeters squared or meters squared, anything like that. Okay, so the first shape we're looking at is the rectangular prism. Now, with surface area, we're looking at unfolding a three-dimensional shape to make it several different two-dimensional shapes. So if you look at a rectangular prism here in the middle is a net diagram. If you look at the different shapes, we have actually all rectangles, but different sized rectangles. So this one's the same as this one, and this one's the same as this one, and we see this one is the same as this one. Okay, so we actually have three sets of different rectangles, but they're in pairs. So that's how we come up with our formula up here. You'll see the formula. So there's two because there's pairs of rectangles, and each of the multiplication in the brackets represents each of the rectangles. So you'll see the three different rectangle formulas in here, which represents the three sizes we see. So let's look at all the dimensions. So we have length. This would be the length along here. We have the width and we have the height. Okay. So I've predetermined some dimensions here for you, and we're going to input them into the formula. So watch your bed mass. We'll go through that at the same time. So we'll use, so surface area equals 2 times, we have width times height. So we have 5 times 6 plus length times width. So 5 times 10 plus, and we have length times height, 10 times 6. So surface area equals, we have we have brackets going on here. We have multiplication and addition happening in the brackets. And as you recall, our multiplication in the brackets need to happen first. So I put some brackets in there, or little indicators to tell us that we have to do 5 times 6, which is 30. And then 5 times 10, or 10 times 5, which is 50. And 10 times 6, which is 60. Okay, so in the brackets now, you will see some addition. So we have to do that addition before we do anything else. So we have 30 plus 50, which is 80. 80 plus 60, which is 140. When we have the 2 beside a bracket, as many of you recall, that means multiplication. So 2 times 140 gives me 280. And that's our final answer, 280. And we're talking about meters here squared. Good, so that's our rectangular prism. Our next one we have here is a triangular prism. So I'm going to scroll down. Triangular prism is a little bit trickier because we had time to talk about, in our first lesson about measurement, we talked about this tricky thing called the slant height. Okay, so it's a new dimension that we haven't seen. So let's look at all our dimensions so we can identify what this looks like. So here we have our B, or our base, is right at the bottom of the triangle. Our height is from the tip of the triangle down, so that's our height. Okay, and our length is along the edge here. So our slant height actually falls on the slant of the triangle there, so that's called S. Okay, so once again, look at all the shapes that we have. We have 2 similar rectangles, we have a middle rectangle, and we have 2 triangles there. once again, just so you guys can see, this is, oops, I need the thinner one here. This is my height right here. This is my base. And then right around here is my slant height. Okay? So technically, if you look at my dimensions here, we're not given the slant height. Okay? So we talked about early on in this unit that to find the slant height, we have this, this, and we're looking for this. So if you look at this, it makes a right triangle. And what we learned last unit is we can use Pythagorean theorem to find a missing side length. So let's label everything we have according to Pythagorean theorem. So you guys all know, or you all recall, that this is C here. Okay? I'll do it in red so you see it a little better. This is C, which is also the same as the slant height. And we're going to call this A and this B. Okay? So you guys remember A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So our C squared is the same as the slant height. Okay? So let's fill in information. So if you look at A is the same as the height. So I'm going to put in for A 1.7, which represents my height. Now, looking at my B, I'm not using the whole length of B. I'm using half of the base. So half of the base, if you look at base up here, is 2. Half of it is 1. So in the formula, I'm going to put 1 squared equals C squared. So at this point, I'm going to put some stuff in my calculator. Good time to pause the video if you want to try this out on by yourself. But we're going to start with 1.7 squared. So 1.7 times 1.7 will give you 2.89. 1 squared 1 times 1 gives you 1. We add these up, it gives us 3.89. The opposite of squared is square rooting. So when you round this, it actually gives you 2. So this would give us 2 meters equals C, which is technically our S as well. Okay, let's put some things in the formula. So we'll start with surface area equals the base, which is 2 times by the length, which is 5.2, plus 2 times the length, which is 5.2, times by the slant height, which is 2, plus, I'm going to scroll this over a little bit, plus our base, which is 2, times by our height, which is 1.7. So we have multiplication and addition. So all our multiplication has to happen first, and then our addition. So if you do 2 times 5.2, you get 10.4. If you do 2 times 5.2 times 2, you would get 20.8. And if you do 2 times 1.7, you get 3.4. 3.4. So to finish off, we just add up all our numbers here. And if you add them up, we get 34.6 meters squared. Okay, so our next one, we'll scroll down. We are doing, this way. We are doing our square-based pyramid. So for this one, our dimensions, our bases are all along here and they're all the same. That's why it's squared. Our height is up and down from the tip to the bottom, and you will see it also creates that right triangle. Once again, if you look at the diagram, we have a square in the middle and we have 4 rectangles. So you notice the 4 rectangles are represented in that part of the equation, the 2 times base times side length, and the b squared represents the square. Once again, just like the triangular prism, we once again have that slant height. So let's deal with that C again, A and B. Okay, so we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So A we know is the height, which is 4.1 squared. We know B is half of the base. So half of the base is 2.6 squared, because it's half of 5.2 equals C squared. Okay, 4.1 squared gives me 16.81. And 2.6 squared gives me 6.76. When we add those together, we get 23.57. And then we square root it. When you square root it, we round it to 4.9 meters equals C. So that is, once again, that's our slant height, our S dimension that we'll put in the equation over here. Okay, so let's put some dimensions in here. So we have surface area equals, we have 2 times by my base, which is 5.2, times by my slant height, which we know is 4.9, plus our base squared, which is 5.2, times 5.2. As you can see, I'm still learning to write on here. It's slowly coming. So surface area equals, we need to do our multiplication first. Okay, so my multiplication, when I do 2 times 5.2 plus times 4.9, I get 51 when I round. Plus, when I do 5.2 times 5.2, I get 27 when I round to 1 decimal place. When I add them together, we get 78 meters squared. Okay, so as you notice, the square base pyramid and the triangular pyramid both have that dimension of S. So we will finish up with the easier formula, other than it has pi. I just want to remind you guys, with this cylinder, the radius is always in the middle over. Remember, the diameter is fully across. Okay, so recall that, because you might need that. So once again, diameter is fully across, perimeter is radius is halfway there. So we have radius is R, and we have the height here is H. Okay, so we don't have slant height here because there's nothing slanted in the cylinder. Notice that we have two circles. If I can highlight that, 2 circles, which is where we get the 2 pi r squared, 1 rectangle, which is the second part of the formula. Okay, so let's put all our dimensions in. So we have surface area equals 2 times pi times r squared plus 2 times pi times r times h, which I should have started filling in the numbers, but let's fill them in now. 2 times pi times the radius is 10 squared plus 2 times pi times 10 times by the height of 25. Pretty easy formula. Just watch your pi button on your calculator. So we have kind of multiplication both happening here, but we do have an exponent. So I'm going to do that first. Okay. So we have surface area equals 2 times pi times 100 plus, which is what I get when I do this, 10 squared, 2 times pi times 10 times 25. When I do that multiplication, I get 2 times pi times 100, I get 628.3. And if I do 2 times pi times 10 times 25, 1,570.8. And when I add them together, At 2,199.1 centimeters.